ancient Egyptians to measure the rise of the annual flood, which occurred every summer. This enabled tax assessors to estimate the revenue from the grain harvest the following spring. Even in those days, farmers complained that they did all the work and the taxman got all the profit. Akhenaten elevated the Aten, the disk of the sun, to be the state god of Egypt in a form of monotheism. At the same time, he introduced a dramatic change of art style and built a new capital city in Middle Egypt. Akhenaten's beautiful wife, Queen Nefertiti, was a keen supporter of the cult of the Aten. After Akhenaten's death, the Egyptians returned to the old form of the religion during the reign of his successor, Tutankhamun, who was probably his son. Later pharaohs tried to wipe out all traces of Akhenaten's existence. Ramesses II had one of the longest reigns in ancient Egyptian history, as he was pharaoh for 67 years. In the 5th year of his reign, he fought a great battle against the Hittites from northern Syria. The battle was indecisive, both sides claiming victory, but it is certain that Ramesses' personal courage saved the Egyptians from defeat. 16 years later, the king signed a peace treaty with the Hittite leader Hattusilus II, which was the first recorded peace treaty in world history.
Lily pads, هذول do they call it lily pads?
The most famous of Ramesses II's monuments is the great temple at Abu Simbel in Nubia, south of Aswan.
What is it in Arabic?
With its famous colossal statues cut entirely in the rock. Temple of Ramesses' favorite queen, Nefertari. The two temples were rescued from Lake Nasser when the Aswan High Dam was being built in the 1960s.
What?
لا بسموها سكير كرو صح ايش هي؟
His mother had put him in a basket and floated him on the Nile to prevent him from being killed by Pharaoh's soldiers. The child was discovered by a member of Pharaoh's family and was brought up in the royal palace. Eventually, he became a prophet who led his own people, the Hebrews, out of Egypt. He was believed to protect people against snakes and scorpions, and was particularly regarded as a favorite of childhood. In general, best of the God of pleasure and enjoyment of every kind. Scatters the seed from a small bag or basket, and sheep follow the sower who press the seed tough soil with their feet. Beside the houses in the background are pigeon towers. The Egyptians used pigeons for food, and they were used for carrying messages, especially for the army. The fields are irrigated by means of the shadoof, which works like a balance, with a bucket at one end of a long pole and a heavy stone as a counterweight. Shadoofs are still sometimes used in the Egyptian countryside. When the grain is harvested, the sheaves are carried to the threshing floor in a net bag over a long pole. When a thick layer of grain has been spread on the circular floor, oxen or cows are driven round to break up the ears of grain with their heavy feet. The next process is winnowing, when the grain is tossed up into the air so that the lighter chaff or husk will blow away on the wind. The grain is then taken to be stored in the silos. The scribe makes a careful record of all the grain which is being stored. This was important for taxation purposes, as there was no money in Egypt at various times.
I love you some water.
Honey was used for sweetening by the ancient
I
Egyptians,
really love you.
as sugarcane was not grown in Egypt in those days. Beehives were made of pottery tubes piled up in rows, and in some parts of the country, beehives are still made this way today.
Oh, too bad.
The River Nile was the main highway of communication in pharaonic times,
Oh, too bad.
so boat building was an important industry. Small boats were made of bundles of papyrus tied together with ropes. Such boats were used for short journeys and for fishing or hunting trips. Larger boats were made of wood, usually cedar wood imported from
I'll
Lebanon.
edit for my mom.
Wooden boats were pegged together with dowels and sewn together with ropes, as can be seen in the cross-section on the bank.
Recording all of this.
When the boat was put into the water, the wood expanded and the rope shrank, so the boat became completely watertight. A royal boat of this type can be seen in the museum beside the Great
Best
Pyramid
Rima.
of King Cheops at Giza.
What?
The palm tree was a valuable resource for the Egyptians. The trunk was used in house building, and the branches provided fronds for making mats and baskets, while furniture and boxes were made from the ribs. The boxes were used for storage and as cages for small animals and birds. The Egyptians today still use the various parts of the palm tree for the same purposes.
What is he
There were
doing?
many different kinds of fish
That's
in
how
the
they
Nile and
fish.
its
They
canals,
used to
which
fish.
made good food.
That's how they
And
get
fishing
fish.
was also
Yeah.
popular as a sport. One method of fishing can be seen here,
Oh.
where a net is
Good
stretched
job.
between two boats, and the fisherman hits the water with a stick to frighten the fish into the net. Let's see if he's been lucky today.
Oh yeah, I see it. Yeah. Is this all African? No.
Yeah, they're all for us. They're all here for us.
Ancient times. Oh. It's showing us all what happened in ancient times.
انسلقت من الشوب كثير شو افتح لي هاي حسام افتح لي هاي ان شاء الله.
Next are demonstrations of some industries and crafts, the first of which is brickmaking. The material used is the Nile mud, which is mixed with water and chopped straw into a thick paste. This paste is put into a wooden mould, and the bricks are then simply left to dry in the sun. As there is little heavy rain in Egypt, these mud bricks can last for centuries. The houses of the ancient Egyptians, even the palaces of the pharaohs, were constructed of sun-dried mud brick. The roof was made of split palm trunks covered with branches. The building was covered with a thick layer of mud, which acted as insulation against heat, wind, and rain. Glassmaking was introduced into Egypt after the military campaigns of Thutmose III about 1450 BC, when captive glassmakers were brought here from Syria.
بلا
Glass was used for making beads, inlays, amulets and small vessels, which were formed around a core, as glass blowing was not invented until the 1st century BC. In Ptolemaic times, Alexandria became a center of glass craftsmanship, and in the Roman period, fine cameos were produced in the same city.
حسام بقول تتحرك
Well, I actually thought that this was random people just like
The Egyptians are also famous for mummifying their dead. Mummification is basically dehydration, and to speed up this process, the internal organs of the body were removed and preserved separately. The body was dried out by being covered with natron salt, a form of soda found in the deserts of Egypt. The body was then cleaned and embalmed and wrapped in several layers of linen bandages. Amulets were put between the bandages to protect the mummy from harm. The whole process took 70 days.
Pottery, yes. I love seeing pottery. When he's dad asked me if I wanted to make pottery with him. I didn't because we were about to leave.
Pottery making is one of the oldest crafts in Egypt, dating back to about 6000 BC. The clay is kneaded with water and mixed with ground potsherds or chopped straw, which helps the finished pot to dry evenly without cracking. The potter forms the pot with his fingers as he kicks the wheel round with his foot. The handles are added afterwards, and the pot is dried in the sun for a while before being fired. Now for a little Egyptian magic. This scene shows the different stages in decorating a stone wall. First of all, the surface is leveled, then smoothed and polished with a piece of hard stone. Grid lines are marked in red on the prepared surface to ensure accurate enlargements of the original drawings. The artist copies the outline onto the wall, working from the sketch made by the chief artist on a small slab of stone or a piece of papyrus. Then the sculptor carves the design in relief with his mallet and chisel. Finally, the details would be painted in color to make the picture look as realistic as possible.
Well, I actually thought this was just random people you see. Like as we go, just random people doing their job, but they don't know that they're boats. They're just acting. I didn't know that they were acting. When I saw the fake
Statues were partially carved in the quarry where the stone for them was cut. First of all, the block of stone is separated from the rock face by hammering wooden wedges into holes cut in the rock. The wedges are soaked with water, and as the wood expands, the block breaks away. After the stone has been smoothed and polished, the profile of the work is outlined on one side, and then the sculptor carves out the figure, rounding it off first on the front and then on the back. Vases were made from various kinds of stone, particularly alabaster, a soft stone which was worked into beautiful designs. After the rough piece of alabaster has been polished smooth, the inside is hollowed out with a drill with a flint or copper bit. The vase is sunk into the ground to prevent cracking during drilling. Alabaster vases were used as lamps and for storing perfumes and precious oils. The tools of the carpenter and joiner were made of copper, wood and bronze. On the left, a man is sawing a log of wood into planks. Other tools used were a hammer, chisel, an adze and a bow drill for boring holes. It was important to the pharaohs that the army was well equipped at all times. Weapons included bows and arrows, swords, battle axes and spears, as well as shields and throw sticks. The horse-drawn war chariot was introduced into Egypt by the Hyksos from Western Asia around 1700 BC. Perfumes were very popular in ancient Egypt and consisted chiefly of fragrant oils and
Rush hour
fats.
run here.
The juice is extracted from sweet-smelling flowers in a bag of heavy canvas, the ends of which are twisted in opposite directions with wooden bars. This
Dump your head
scented
in that
extract
bucket.
is then mixed with oil or fat as a base. Linen made from the flax plant was used by the Egyptians for clothing and many other purposes. Bundles of flax stalks are pulled through a large wooden comb to remove the tops and leaves. The stalks are soaked in water for a few days to soften them and then beaten with a wooden mallet. They are then pulled through a smaller comb to separate the fibers from the outer woody covering, and the good fibers are picked out and spun into thread on a spindle. The fine linen thread is then woven into cloth on a loom. The earliest looms in Egypt were horizontal, and the upright loom was brought to this country by the Hyksos.
Is put into this. Take her with you.
Mangiate loro.
Another important industry was papyrus paper making, for which the government had the monopoly. The lowest part of the stem is the best part for paper making.
ايش هو؟
The outer green rind is peeled off and the
لا،
white
ورق
tip is
هذا ورق.
sliced into thin
ورق
strips
البردة.
which are soaked in water.
مش برادي لا.
After repeated
البردة.
soaking, the now pliable strips are placed on a piece of cloth in two layers, one vertical and one horizontal. The surface of the sheet thus formed is then hammered with a wooden mallet to cause the fibers of the two layers to stick together. The sheet is then covered with another piece of cloth and pressed between two heavy stones for several days. During that time it also dries out in the hot sun and the piece of paper is ready for use.
ده الورق للكتابة.
Good wine was appreciated in pharaonic times, and this scene shows the method of winemaking. Bunches of ripe grapes are taken to the vat where the grapes are trodden out, and the juice extracted is poured into large pottery jars to ferment. When this process is complete, the jars are sealed with a clay seal, which is stamped with the date and the name of the vineyard where the grapes were grown.
هو هيرجعنا ولا؟